Professor Sockcamp here. In this video, we're going to talk about employee net pay. There are a couple of steps that we have to take to compute the net pay for our employees. First of all, we have to determine the gross pay. From gross pay, we're going to subtract some pre-tax deductions, which can be things like medical insurance or retirement or cafeteria plans. And once we do that, we are able to find the total taxable earnings for our employee. Then we subtract the taxes that are supposed to be withheld from their pay. Federal income tax, FICA taxes, which are Social Security and Medicare, state taxes, and others. There may be some voluntary or other mandatory deductions to take out as well. And once we've done that, once we've taken everything out that needs to be taken out, we have the employee's net pay. So the focus of our video here is going to be on federal income tax withholding. Determining federal income tax withholding depends on whether you have an employee who has a W-4 that's 2020 or later, or whether you have an employee whose W-4 is pre-2020. The pre-2020 W-4s, withholding is based on your gross pay, your pay frequency, your marital status, and the number of withholding allowances the employees selected. In the 2020 and newer W-4s, withholding is based on filing status, whether there are multiple jobs or spouses' employment, dependents under the age of 17, and other dependents that are not under the age of 17. So we're going to take a look at Fredbird, the best mascot in the world. And Fredbird, in our illustration here, earns $40,000 a year. He's paid semi-monthly. He is going to file jointly with his spouse, who also works, and they have two dependents under the age of 17. So we're going to use this basic scenario to kind of walk through the different steps that we have to take depending on the W-4 that is in place. So pre-2020 W-4, withholding again based on gross pay, pay frequency, marital status, and the number of withholding allowances. So if we had a W-4 like this one from 2019, before 2020, and Fredbird's filled it out, we see his name, his social security number, his address, he's married, and he's selected 4 allowances. And so what do we do with this from here? In order to figure out how much to withhold from his earnings, we need to choose a method. And so we're going to look first here at the wage bracket method and the percentage method. So if he chooses to do either one of these methods, we need information. We need information from the IRS to be able to figure out how much should be taken out. And so the 2021 Publication 15T from the IRS is the Federal Income Tax Withholding Methods document. There are 7 different sections to this, and so we need to look at the appropriate one for the given scenario. In the case of the wage bracket method, or the percentage method for a pre-2020 W-4, we need to look at either Section 3 or Section 5. Section 3 is the wage bracket method tables for manual payroll systems with Forms W-4 from 2019 or earlier. And then Section 5 is the percentage method tables for manual payroll systems with Forms W-4 from 2019 or earlier. So these are the 2 sections we would want to look at. So let's take a look at the wage bracket method first. Within Publication 15T, there is a worksheet, worksheet number 3, Employers Withholding Worksheet for Wage Bracket Method for Manual Payroll Systems with Forms W-4 from 2019 or earlier. And so first of all, we see step 1 here, figure the tentative withholding amount. 1A enter the employee's total taxable wages this payroll period. So he's earning $40,000 per year, semi-monthly, which means $1,667. Now, there could be other things that affect the taxable wages, but in our scenario here, we're just trying to keep it simple to go through these different methods. So we put in 1667. 1B, use the amount on line 1A to look up the tentative amount to withhold in the appropriate wage bracket table in this section for the pay frequency, the marital status, etc., right? So we need a big table. And in publication 15T, we see the table here for 2021 wage bracket method table for manual payroll systems with forms W-4 from 2019 or earlier. And so we see here this table, which on the left-hand side has two columns, which says if the wage amount in line 1A is at least but less than, well, that's the row we need to be in. So we need to find the row. And so for our situation here, we have a situation where he's earning $1,667. And so down here toward the bottom, we have at least $1,660, but less than $1,700. So this is the row we need to be in. And we know from his W-4, he selected 4 allowances, which means we're going to go to column 4, okay, in terms of the number of allowances. And we see here that it suggests that we withhold $46. So $46 is the wage bracket method for pre-2020 W-4. We put that here on 1B. Step 2 says figure the final amount to withhold. So enter any additional amount to withhold from line 6 of the W-4, which we didn't have, and then add those two together. So our withholding amount for this pay period should be 46. So that's pre-2020 wage bracket method. If we look at pre-2020 percentage method, we have worksheet 5. Worksheet 5, again, is the employer's withholding worksheet for percentage method tables for manual payroll systems with forms W-4 from 2019 or earlier. So line 1A under step 1, enter the total taxable wages, $1,667. Enter the number of allowances claimed on the employee's most recent W-4. We saw that Fredberg put down 4. 1C, multiply line 1B by the amount in table 6 for your pay frequency. So he is paid semi-monthly, okay, and so 179 times 4 is 716. Now, where does the 179 come from? The annual allowance is 4,300. You see that in the first column of table 6 there. To figure out how much it is for each pay period, you divide it by the number of pay instances in the pay frequency. So with semi-monthly, that's 24. So we divide the 4,300 by 24, we get 179. So then we see here under step 1, line 1B, subtract line 1C, the 716, from line 1A, the 1667. If it's 0 or less, enter 0. But we don't have 0, right? We have 951. Then, step 2, figure the tentative withholding amount. So based on your pay frequency, the employee's adjusted wage amount, and marital status. 2A, find the row in the percentage method table in this section in which the amount on line 1D is at least the amount in column A, but less than the amount in column B, and then enter the amount from column A of that row. So we need to find the right table. So we have the semi-monthly payroll period, and we are looking for married persons, and it says if the adjusted wage amount, line 1D, is at least column A, but less than column B, that's the row we need to be in. And so our number, right, was 951. So 951 falls between 508 and 1338. And so we can calculate, based on this row, how much the tentative withholding amount is supposed to be. the tentative withholding amount should be 0, which is column C, plus 10% of the amount over 508. And so for our scenario here, we have 0 plus 10% times the amount over 508, which is 951 minus 508. And so we find that our amount is 0 plus 10% of 443. 443 is the amount over 508. And so we find here, based on this, that our tentative withholding amount is $44.30, or 44.3. And so this is the same process that this worksheet walks through here. Okay, so step 2 is going through that same mathematical process. And it just has you do it by filling out the form. So we get to step 3, and we see, is there any additional amount to be withheld, which we didn't have. And so the amount to withhold is $44.30, or 44.3. Now, we can also, for this determination, use the IRS income tax withholding assistant. We would put in pay frequency twice a month, that's semi-monthly. The taxable salary in the paycheck is $1,667. And the W-4 is a pre-2020, before 2020. This then also populates the right side over here and says, hey, what's the filing status, which is married, and how many allowances were put on the W-4, which we had 4. Putting that in, it tells us that the amount of federal income tax to withhold from the paycheck is $45. So whether we use the wage bracket method, which tells us it's 46, the percentage method, which is 44.3, or the assistant, which is 45, we're generally getting the same number, dollar or two, right? Difference, or dollar difference. So the pre-2020 process, right? You're either going to use the wage bracket worksheet and tables, the percentage worksheet and table, or the assistant. And they should, within some degree of variability, give you the same answer. Now, if we have a 2020 W-4 or later, then we have a different scenario. The W-4 changed quite significantly in 2020 due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And so we see here Fred Bird filled out his personal information, and then he's going to select married filing jointly. And then we see step 2, multiple jobs or spouse works. We see in our information that his spouse works. I don't know who his spouse is, but she works as well. And we have 3 options here, A, B, and C. Do only one of the following. So you can use the estimator, or use the multiple jobs worksheet on page 3. Or if there are only 2 jobs total, you may check this box. Do the same on Form W-4 for the other job. This option is accurate for jobs with similar pay. Otherwise, more tax than necessary may be withheld. So he's going to check the box. We're going to do this example as having checked the box. Step 3, claim dependents. So if your total income will be $200,000 or less, $400,000 or less if married, filing jointly, which it is here for Fred Bird and his spouse, then we're going to multiply the number of qualifying children under the age of 17 by 2,000. We see here in the information for Fred Bird, he has 2 dependents under 17, so our number would be 4,000. We're going to multiply the number of other dependents by 500, but there are no other dependents in this scenario. So we add those 2 amounts, and we get 4,000 as our number for step 3. Step 4, other additional withholding information, we are going to leave that blank for this illustration. So this W-4, again, quite different, does not include allowances, right? And so we have a different set of tables to go through, but we still have the same general methods. In this case, we have the wage bracket or the percentage method, for manual payroll systems with Forms W-4 from 2020 or later. Therefore, we have sections 2 and 4 to look at rather than 3 and 5. So let's go ahead and look at the wage bracket method. Here we have a worksheet. This is worksheet 2. Employers withholding worksheet for wage bracket method tables for manual payroll systems with Forms W-4 from 2020 or later. And so this has 4 steps to it. Step 1, first thing, enter the employee's total taxable wages, $1,667. Enter the number of pay periods you have per year. Well, that's 24 for semi-monthly. Enter the amount from Step 4A on the employee's Form W-4. Step 4 of the W-4, we had zeros for everything. And then we're going to divide the amount on line 1C, which is 0, by the payroll periods on line 1B, which is 24, which that gives us a 0. And so we have line 1E here, adding line 1A and 1D. So total of 1667 and 0 is 1667. Line 1F, enter the amount from Step 4B on the employee's Form W-4, which again, Step 4, we had zeros. And then divide that amount by the number of pay periods, which again gives us 0. And then we're going to subtract that from line 1E, so 0, subtracted from 1667 is 1667. So you could have numbers here in different scenarios. If you have numbers in your section or step 4 on your W-4, but in this case, we didn't for illustrated purposes. Now, step 2, figure the tentative withholding amount. So again, we need to use the amount on line 1H, 1667, to look up the tentative withholding amount in the appropriate wage bracket table. And so we're going to look at a table here. In this table, the 2021 wage bracket method tables for manual payroll systems with Forms W-4 from 2020 or later, semi-monthly payroll, and we know that the amount is 1667, so it comes in between 1660 and 1680. Now, depending on whether we are married filing jointly, head of household, or single or married filing separately, we have different columns to look at. We're married filing jointly in this scenario, but even within that, we have 2 different columns to choose from. Standard withholding, or Form W-4 Step 2 with the box checked. And that's what we saw on Fred Bird's W-4. He had checked the box under step number 2. And so we're going to use the grayed out column. And so our tentative withholding amount here for Fred Bird should be $129. So we put that here in 2A. Then we move on to step 3. Enter the amount from step 3 of the W-4. Step 3 of the W-4 was about the dependents. And on ours, we had selected 2 dependents or inputted 2 dependents, multiplied both of those by 2,000, and we got $4,000. We're pulling it directly from our W-4. We divide that then by the number of pay periods, which is 24, and on line 3B that gives us $167. We subtract line 3B, which is 167, from line 2A, which is the amount we selected from the table. So we're going to take 167 and subtract it from 129. So 129 minus 167 gives us a number that's less than 0. So if it's 0 or less, we enter 0. Step 4, enter the additional amount to withhold from Step 4C, which we had 0 selected in Step 4 of the W-4. And so the amount to withhold is 0. Given this scenario, we would not withhold anything for Fred Bird. Now, obviously, scenarios vary. Many times you will have things to withhold, but in this illustrative example, the answer is 0. The percentage method, if we have a 2020 W-4 or later. we're going to use worksheet 4. This again has 4 steps. The first step is very much almost identical to what we just did on the other one. We have 1667 as the wages that are taxable, 24 pay periods. We had zeros in step 4, and so line 1E gives us 1667. We had another 0 on line step 4, so we get 0, and we end here with the adjusted wage amount of 1667. From here, we need to go find the right percentage table. And so within that section, section 4, there is a percentage table for semi-monthly payroll for W-4 forms that are 2020 or later. This has 2 different sections to it that are both married filing jointly here. On the left-hand side, you see standard withholding rate schedules when the W-4 step 2 box is not checked. And then on the right side, you see the percentages and whatnot when the W-4 step 2 check box is checked. So that's the one that we need since he selected to check the box for step 2 on the W-4. Now, his wages fall within the 938 to 2211, okay, at least 938 but less than 2211 row. As a result, we can use the formula to figure out what should be withheld. So we know that the tentative amount to withhold is $41.50 plus 12% of the amount over 938. So $41.50 plus 12% of the amount over 938. So 1667 minus 938 gives us 729. Then we take the 12% times the 729 and we find that is 8748. So we add those two numbers together, 4150 and 8748, and we find the amount to be 128.98. Okay, 128.98. Now, if we go back quickly to the other method, the amount using the wage bracket was 129, right? Step 2A, 129. Here, using the percentage method, we find that it's 128.98, which rounds up to 129. So both methods really should give us close to this same value. But then we have to continue on with the form, the worksheet. So step 2 basically helps us calculate the same thing we just did with the formula on the other slide. If we fill out the rows here in step 2, we'll come to the same conclusion, 128.98. Step 3 then pulls in the dependents. So enter the amount from step 3 of the employee's W-4, which is $4,000 for the 2 dependents, $2,000 apiece, divided by the number of pay periods, which is 167, and then subtract it from line to F, 128.98, which again is less than 0, so we get 0. Step 4, there were no additional amounts withheld, and so our withholding should be 0. Now, we can also use the tax assistant for the Form W-4s that are post-2020 or 2020 or on. When you open the assistant, I believe that's what it's defaulted to, 2020 or later W-4 use. Okay. Now, these steps here directly relate to the W-4 steps. So you're going to fill out the filing status. That comes from step 1. Step 2, did you check the box? Yes or no? Step 3, what's the amount on line 3 from the dependents? And step 4, what are the other amounts? Okay. And so if we do that here for Fredbird, twice a month is the pay frequency, semi-monthly. The wage amount is $16.67. It's 2020 or later. He's married filing joint. He did check the box, and the amount is $4,000 on line 3. It tells us that the wage amount should be 0. So whether we use the wage bracket, the percentage, or the assistant, we should arrive at basically the same answer as we do with the pre-2020s. These are the three ways we can do it. So again, looking at federal income tax withholding amounts, if we have a W-4 that's 2020 or later, then manual systems, we would look at sections 2 or 4 to either use the wage bracket or the percentage method. If we have a W-4 that's pre-2020, we would look at sections 3 or 5 for the wage bracket or percentage method to determine how much to be withheld. Or we can use the tax assistant Excel file from the IRS.